This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where, yes, business owners share their wisdom. It's short and to the point, to respect people's time. And because we know transforming possibility happens really fast and it leads to lasting results. So enough of that. Let's get to it. I have a special guest today, Vincent. In a few short sentences, share with us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, most importantly, I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm married almost 20 years now to my awesome wife, Elizabeth. We have 3 boys. We homeschool, and we do that because we want freedom, and we want to be able to raise our kids the way that we see the world going. And it gives us a lot of opportunity for travel, a lot of opportunity for lessons, and just connectedness so we can grow together. I run a series of businesses. I'm an author with a book coming out titled The 𝐒𝐿th of Connection, and have a podcast and a whole bunch of different things that we juggle around.
I love it. Say the name of the book one more time.
The book is called The 𝐒𝐿th of Connection.
I love it. I know you to be a connection person. We met quite a while back.
Yep.
That was an interesting conversation, and we've stayed in touch ever since. I've seen you scale over the years, which is really cool, and I'm excited for your book. So we'll get to that more here shortly. Yeah. Definitely. But I also know you to be a freedom guy. So it's interesting. I know you walk the talk. And so not only I thought it was interesting that you mentioned freedom, but you're even doing that with your children, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's like I see so many entrepreneurs that they preach it and they live it, yet they send their kids down the traditional path of, well, do what everybody else is doing. I'm like, well, you know what the problems are with doing that. You know how you have to fight to get out of that, to then build that as an adult. But yet, oh, kids, let's go through the same system that's going to put you on that path. And we were like, so when our kids were in 3rd grade and 1st grade, we realized very fast that we weren't living the life with them that we wanted. Like, because working from home, we would go to the park whenever we want, we would travel. And then all of a sudden there was this schedule and there was this homework and there was all this type of stuff. And they were getting tired and stressed out. Our relationship wasn't what we wanted it to be. And we had friends, the 𝐒𝐞𝐜𝐿𝐼𝐿𝐼nos, homeschooled. And we were like, what is that like? We thought it was just, crazy people that make their own clothes and, live in a weird house. Like, homeschooling to us was just kind of bizarre. It was taught to us. It was bizarre, odd people. And then I meet these people that are amazing and they're raising their kids wonderfully and have this time. And I'm like, I said to my wife, I said, what do you think? And it took us a couple of weeks and we're like, we're doing it. And we started homeschooling the following year. And then we started traveling for months at a time because we lived in Pennsylvania then. And we're like, we hate the winters. So we would leave for a month and then eventually 3 and 4 months and build businesses around that. So they get to see the way that we're living our life, the way we're building our businesses while teaching them. So each of our kids has their own business. And we told them from the very beginning, we're not giving you any money. As my dad said to me, so you're going to figure it out. And there's no allowances because you shouldn't be allowed to have something that you didn't earn. And so we kind of go against a lot of traditional stuff that even some family members push back against, but it works great for us.
I love it. And it's so interesting. We didn't meet this way, but we happen to both be from Pittsburgh. So yep. Shout out to the Berg. And now we're both in Florida, which is kind of interesting too. So yep. It's great stuff. It's interesting that the turn of events. I also want to shout out something important that you said. You said you're coming on 20 years of marriage. That's an achievement in and of itself. So I celebrate you for that, my friend. And I didn't want to overlook that statement.
I'll celebrate Elizabeth because she's the one that's put up with more than I've had to put up with. She's the one that had to deal with me and all my ideas. And, it's funny because we joked with each other a lot. Like, she was a great student in school and I was a terrible student in school. And so we wound up going to college. We met in college at Ohio University for journalism. And she was, then that was the first time that I did well in school because I cared, right? Because it was something that I cared about for photography and journalism. And we wound up getting jobs at a newspaper together. And she would always make fun of me because of my school and my lack of schooling. And then one day I finally figured it out and she was giving me a hard time. And I said, you make fun of my grades and everything. I said, but we've got the same exact job. And she immediately was like, oh crap. Like, all of her hard work and great grades wound her up with the same job as somebody that barely graduated high school. So it was a joke because it was like my ambition and drive led to getting to a place where it didn't really matter what my grades were. It mattered what your connection and your skills and your talents are. It wasn't about how well you did on a test. And I think she's learned that. And now seeing this with our kids, life isn't about grades. That's not what makes you successful. And I think that's a challenging thing for so many people now because the school system really puts such an emphasis on that, and they have for so long.
That's an important point. And people don't like talking about that, right? This is like one of those subjects that people don't want to talk about, right? People spend tons and tons and tons of money in the institutional schooling. But I personally have come to realize the same thing, and people either do or they don't, but that's grades don't equal success, do they? It's about the relationships.
Well, it's the old joke, and I've done enough studying on this now to become kind of dangerous with it, where it's like there's the old saying that the A students now work for the C students, and the C students, then the D students are the ones that dedicate the buildings. And the way it goes, so like the C students are the ones that are building the businesses, and the A students, and people will push back against this, but every A student tells me the same thing. They're so good at following directions and not questioning and not even being curious because they want to get the grade. Whereas the C and D student is like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why are you doing that? And then the teachers go, well, stop being a troublemaker, go to the back of the class or go somewhere else. And we knew that we weren't dumb. I knew I wasn't dumb, but I knew in school that I didn't fit in. So all I needed to do was get out. I just need to get out and do my own thing, even as much as a struggle as it was. So to be able to think that way, and I think it's even worse now than it was back in the 90s. I think the system has really gotten harder on kids. And I think it's really important just to at least think about it, to wonder why you're doing this. I'm not saying do what we've done, but just at least wonder why you're doing what you're doing with your kids. Because this is what's more valuable than us, than our marriage, our kids. The business supports all this. This is not about me being some mogul where I'm known for business. I want to be known for my family.
That speaks to me. That actually resonates deeply with me, as well as many entrepreneurs. I mean, frankly, I was told I had oppositional disorder and all these other kinds of things when I was young, right? But really, none of that was really the case, right? That whole institution, sit down, shut up, do your work, do it the way I tell you to do it, just didn't really work all that well for me. So
and the people like you and I, ADD or ADHD, whatever you want to label it, we're not dumb. It's just that we were told that we were dumb. We were told we don't fit in. And then if you read John Taylor Gatto, which really blew our mind in terms of homeschooling, in terms of the school system, he was the New York City School Teacher of the Year for 3 years in a row. And he resigned at his third acceptance speech because he was like, the school system is training people to be confused, to be followers. And he laid it all out. And as soon as we listened to it, we realized that's exactly what's happening. And we were like, this is our opportunity to make a change, to do this. It was not easy. And we've had to give up a lot to do this. And a lot of people don't want to make that sacrifice. But what was amazing with it, with that sacrifice, allowed us to be more creative with our business, which instead of wasting time, we have to be really optimal with our time. And it's made everything better because of it.
I love it. I love it. Sometimes you have to give up to go up. Said.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
I love it, Vincent. This is great. Question number 2. This is a fun one. What's the best thing about being in business? I probably already know your answer.
I don't know. For me, it's one word, and I think it surprises people sometimes. It's options. For me, it's options, because I'm kind of a control freak in some ways, and I'm trying to relinquish some of that. But I didn't like following a schedule in school. I didn't like following a schedule with a job. I didn't want to wake up and do somebody else's schedule when I had to be there. You have to be here no matter what. Even in my own schedule, I don't have a Calendly link for that, because everybody's like, well, can you talk next Thursday at 11? I'm like, well, that means that I can't spend the day with my kids. I can't take them to the beach. So I don't, unless it's a podcast interview, I don't schedule anything out. If you want to talk, my whole thing is freedom. I'm open. Give me a buzz. We'll talk. But I'm not scheduling 2 weeks in advance and now missing out on whatever options go on there because there's something in the middle of my day. Having options for me has been the key, because if we can get up and travel, we can change. If we don't like the way something's going in our business, if you build financial and time freedom, you can change it. You can stop doing what you don't want to do. I love that flexibility, because so many people are stuck like, well, I've studied this for 15 years, so I have to keep doing it. So what? Are you not thinking of being a beginner at something so you can grow the next thing? So I always love being a beginner in something, because it means it means there's a good chance I could fail. And it means that I'm going to learn something. And I'm going to learn it quick. I don't ever want to be the expert that's not growing. And I think that's where a lot of people get in their careers. So the ability to change and write a book or do a podcast or travel for a speech, that's what's so exciting for me. And it gives me the time with my family whenever I want. So that word's the most important one for me.
Love that. There's really a couple important points there. I mean, fail fast, falling forward. You've spoken to that a little bit, right? Yeah. And just, not being afraid. But the freedom aspect that you shared is quite different. Actually, I come from a little bit different as an integrator. I come from a little bit different perspective. So what you said actually kind of struck me, and I was like, oh. You caught me. And that's
it's funny. Well, but I think that's why we're made this way. I am, what is it? The integrator and the visionary, right? I am, if I've never taken it, but I would guarantee that I'd be 98, 99% visionary. So that means you shouldn't feel the way that I do because you're wired a certain way. As the integrator, I can't relate to the integrator. I need the integrator, but I can't relate to the structure of it. Literally, I would just start sweating thinking about it. That's nerve-wracking to me. But what I want is I want to be able to sit at the pool or at the beach or wherever, and I want to think, and I want to have ideas, and I want to have conversations, and I don't want to be scheduled around. And all I need is that one idea at 3:50 in the afternoon to be able to say, here's what we're running with, and then we can structure it out. But we need integrators and we need visionaries. The world would be boring if we're all one or the other.
100%. And I love hearing what you're saying because it makes me a little batty. But that's the beauty.
Which part? The stuff that I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of diversity, and that's what makes the world go round. And so I love hearing what you're saying, even though it's stretching my comfort a little bit.
Of course.
This is the reason why we do these podcasts too. So I love it. Question number 3. This is a fun one. So this will be interesting coming from your perspective. We hear from other business owners, they're getting so much business that sometimes the chaos causes some overwhelm. Would you be willing to share your thoughts on that, Vincent?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what did Oprah, what do they call it? The hug of death from Oprah. Have you ever heard of that? Mm-hmm. It's where, somebody goes on Oprah and they have a product and then she endorses it and she gives them that hug, and it's the hug of death because they weren't prepared for it. The systems weren't in place. Everything wasn't in place. And what was a great thing turns out to be an absolute disaster and a nightmare because they can't keep up with it. I think so many times people want to get too big too fast. And I think that some people will push back against that, but I'm a brick by brick type of guy. So you've got to have your levers and you've got to have your, what are the fuses where it's like, what your levels are and what you can take. So the idea, like, keep building it. I don't really deal with the too much too fast because I don't allow that thing to get filled up too much. We're going to keep building it along, slow and steady. I am so the tortoise in the hare. I am the tortoise on that. And I think that drives some people crazy because they want to scale, and bigger is everything. And I've just met with way too many people who, when they get to a certain level, they go, bigger is not always better. Bigger often is a lot more stressful. It's a lot more people on your team. It's a lot more levels to it that you might not want to do. And what happens a lot, and Seth Godin talked about this, which was management debt. And I don't have very much management debt because I'm kind of a freelancer in a lot of ways. I'm kind of a solopreneur. When you build the team out, as we'll talk about, a lot now, you go from being the visionary or the integrator, whatever it is, to being a lot more of a manager. Even though you're not managing the people, you're managing your people. So now you're spending time on these 5 people and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to create and I want to connect. Those are the 2 things I want to do. So if I can get up and record a podcast, do an interview with Brad, and then write for my book and then make connections, if that's a great day of work for me. So I know a lot of people like that, but they get so caught up in the scale that they forget to do the things that they love doing. They start building something bigger and they don't even enjoy it and they don't know why.
I'm glad you spoke into that. That's a problem actually that I've seen numerous times where people put themselves in positions where they just couldn't handle it, whether they bid on a contract or whatever it is, and no specifics needed here to illustrate. They just scale too fast, and then
Yeah.
they realize how hard that really is, and they have to take a step back. That's even been the case in my own business, being really authentic and
Yeah.
honest. Just recently took a step back in order to take 2 steps forward in the future. So it's a really important point that you're sharing, and I don't want people listening or watching to overlook it.
Well, I think because sometimes it's so easy to be like, oh, go bigger. Why would you not strive? You're missing out on your potential. And I'm like, I don't give a crap about that. I really don't. Your potential changes in different ways in the way you perceive it. But what's the life that you want? That's the question I ask. What's the life that you want, and who are the people that you're helping? Do your people, and this is what is never asked, do your people want you to scale, or do you want to scale? And I get why you'd want to, but would your most loyal, faithful customers want you to scale? Because I've been to restaurants that were the best, and then they decided to scale. And then all of a sudden, the chicken got a little smaller, the service got a little worse, everything got a little bit more corporate. And I go, I miss it before they scaled. I was loyal and I would tell everybody about them. And now I don't, because it's kind of a chain. And a lot of businesses do that. And you lose that personal touch. And the thing that really connects all of us is personal touch. And we lose a lot of that stuff when we go bigger. And I think that's why I think so many people get empty. Like, oh, I thought this would be awesome. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it happens a lot where people are like, I thought this would be awesome, but it's actually not. And I kind of feel like I lost my soul a little bit because I built it for a reason. And now somebody else has control over the decisions. And I'm just kind of a figurehead. And I don't think that's thought of enough when everybody's like, oh, just go get bigger. And I've always been wary of that.
Agreed, indeed. And I love the illustration of restaurants because it's an easy one to grasp. We've probably all seen that happen in a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's great.
And it happens in so many different industries, especially even online with this. It's like so many people were built around what they had really special was what they did personally. And a lot of people don't want to deal with it because like, well, how do you scale that? And I think so often you can build that out if you have the foundation correct to it. But if you don't have the foundation set and then you try to go bigger, that whole thing really likely can collapse on itself.
100%. It's a really important point. I'm glad you brought it up. It's cool. That there's a lot of houses of cards out there. I know you know it, and we see it. No, we definitely share that in common without question. Yeah. Great stuff, Vincent. Great stuff. Question number 4. What other successful business owners, like yourself, of course, should be on the Unlimited Wisdom podcast?
Yeah, this is a great question because I love this. I wrote my book about putting people over. I used to work for the World Wrestling Federation. I was a photographer for them back in the Attitude Era, like the big heyday of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And there's a phrase in that world of like putting people over. And what it means is if you're the champ and there's some up and coming people, they're relying on you and the business is relying on you on putting them over because otherwise they're never going to ascend and you're going to become kind of stagnant and old. So what they do is they let the John Cena's of the world come in and beat them. And then the crowd goes, well, they beat Austin, so John Cena must be good. And then the crowd buys into John Cena and that's putting him over. I think in business, putting people over has to be an essential part of what we do is find people and connect them together. So to your question, John Stange is a good friend of mine. He has a book called Dwell on These Things. He's got 4 podcasts. He's got a membership. Just such a great message that I learned from. I'd be happy to make the connections for any of these people for you, but John would be a great one for you to have on. Christopher Tuff just wrote a book called Savior Asks, and he's about networking and doing the right way. Has become a good friend of mine, is connected in so many different worlds. And his book just released last week, so he's top of mind for me. So Christopher Tuff and John Stange would be 2 that hop into my mind right away.
Great stuff. And both topics that are really needed. Those topics could be discussed every single day and they would still be needed in the market that we live in today.
Without a doubt.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I look forward to connecting with them and having them on. Let's get to some wisdom. Vincent, you have lots of it. I'm a little bit familiar with your programs and what you do and the freedom that you talk about. So I'm really interested to hear, what piece of wisdom would you share with other business owners?
This is a hard one because it's like, that's one piece. It's kind of like, what do you want to be remembered for? It's like, whoa, there's this and there's that. I really think that we have a lot of phoniness that goes on in the business world. There's a lot of pretending. There's a lot of, because if you're on social media or you're on your own, you can't look bad, because if you look bad, then clients aren't going to come to you. So we always have to pretend like things are going great. And we also have a hard time giving other people honest opinions. I truly believe that. It's like, but that doesn't benefit anybody. And I wrote about this, about being generous with your honesty. And I think this is really hard because people are afraid to lose friendships. They're afraid to lose trust. And they're like, oh no, that's great. It's like, your significant other comes in the room like, does this dress make me look fat? And it's like, no, of course, like, right, that whole thing, because you're so afraid if it does to give an honest answer. But for this type of thing, I found that the closest relationships that I've developed over time, the ones that have withstood the storm, are ones where both of us are willing to accept somebody being honest with me. And I give an example of when I was a photographer starting out. There was a guy named Joe Elbert. He was the editor from the Washington Post, which was at that point the best newspaper to work for. That was the journalist's dream. And he was at a conference and he was giving portfolio critiques. And that's worth its weight in gold to have something like that look through your portfolio. And everybody was scared to go to him because they knew he was going to tear him apart. And I saw 3 people not even do it. I'm like, you're serious? Like, you're going to school for this. You have a chance to be edited by one of the best, and you're going to back away from it. So I went in line to get edited, knowing I was going to get pounded. And there was a guy in front of me, and he got pounded. I mean, he was just tearing them apart. Why would you do this? Why'd you take? I mean, it was not easy, right? But I'm like, I need this. I know I need this. So I went up with my slide portfolio that had 20 slides in it, and he proceeded to take out 2 of the slides, push them over to me, and take the whole slide tray of 18 and push it to the side. And I'm like, okay, I didn't do too bad. He took 2 pictures out, right? That's not too bad. And he goes, this is your portfolio. To the 2 pictures, you have 2 ones that stand the test of time. These are ones that any editor would love. Now you got to replace the rest of those with pictures of this quality. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I worked for 2.5 years to build this portfolio, and he just trashed almost the whole thing. But I left there and I didn't get mad about it. I left there and it took me a few minutes to be like, no, the top in the industry told me I had 2 that made it. Now I just need to figure out how I do that over and over again. It was the best piece of advice I got in the beginning of my career, because it made me not accept a lower standard just because somebody would say, oh, that's good enough. I like it when people don't say it's good enough. I like it when people go, you can do better than this. And to get to where you want to get to, you have to do better than this. But so many people are so afraid to give honest feedback that it actually makes everything kind of muted and watered down and not real. And sometimes when you get it, people can't handle it because they're not used to getting it. And I think if we had thicker skin about it and we looked for it more, looked for the feedback, we'd all get a lot stronger.
I love this topic. This is a great leadership topic, Vincent, and it's really an important one. So there's to give and receive is important, but both in business and just in life in general, right? Yeah. That's just my take on what you said. But the interesting thing is, I mean, you said it, I'm paraphrasing, but toughen up. You thicken up your skin, right? That's one side of the 2-sided coin, right? So what I heard you share is, on the one side, toughen up and take feedback. Feedback is a gift, right? Yes. Feedback is a real, honest, candid feedback is a gift like no other.
Especially when they care about you. It's one thing for my neighbor to tell me one thing, which I don't know. But if you've built up trust in my life and I believe in you, I better take that. But it's not from everybody, because you don't know what their background is. But if they've earned your trust, yes. And the other part is to be able to understand how to give it, because you can do it really poorly, you can do it mean, or you can do it in a loving way, but be very tough at the same time. And I think there is a balance to that, to doing it well.
Agreed. There's definitely a polarity there, but it is give and take. So I'm curious. I know you have thicker skin than most. I know this to be true, but what advice might you give to someone that knows they're listening and watching right now? And they're saying, look, I know this is speaking to me. This resonates with me, but I'm just not sure how to toughen up, or I'm not sure how to receive that advice, or even how to go about it. What kind of advice would you share?
That's a great question, because if you've got to surround yourself with people that you trust that are willing to do that for you. You have to. right? Because if you're around people that are not doing very much and they don't really know what they're talking about and they give you feedback, that could be very damaging feedback.
That's
right?
everywhere, isn't it?
It is. So I have a friend, it's a great line, but his name's Bill Convos. And he's like, Vince, I don't wait in line whenever I can. I said, what do you mean? And he said, I go to a Ohio State football game. Like there's a line full of 40 people. I don't wait in line. Like I go to the front of the line and I asked the person in the front of the line, I said, what are you getting? They go, I'm getting 3 hot dogs, 2 sodas, and popcorn. He goes, well, if I buy those 6 things for you, will you get me 3 hot dogs and 2 sodas with my money?
Work smart.
And every single time they go, of course I would. Why would I not just order 5 more things? Pays for their stuff. And he goes to his seat and he sees kickoff with his kids and he enjoys the game. He goes, my time is really valuable and I pay to get to the front. And I can tell you, for me, going to conferences, joining masterminds, going to different events, getting around people that think like this, and then then building relationships and then getting their honest take on it, that speeds up the game so fast, as opposed to going to your brother-in-law that doesn't even know how to run a business and then ask him what you're doing. And he goes, don't go get a job here. And you go, okay, what's my brother-in-law said? I took his advice. Maybe it wasn't good advice. I want to go by the advice of people who've done it often, or they at least understand where I'm coming from. They don't only have to do it, but they have to understand where I'm coming from. And so I do that often. I pay to get to the front. I join different things where I'm going to be around these people, because if you fly to San Diego for a 4-day conference, even the influencers there take you more seriously because you spent a couple of grand and you took time away from your family to do it, as opposed to somebody that sent a DM to them asking for something. So you build relationships, you build connections. And as long as you could do it with integrity and curiosity on the way out, you will build collaborations, you will succeed with what you're doing, but you need that. You need to be around those people.
That's some deep stuff. And honestly, if you're listening and you're watching and that escaped you, I encourage you to go back and actually listen to the words that you just shared, Vincent. It's really powerful stuff. And it's not just about, we're talking about advice. We're talking about gifts. We're talking about caring about one another, really trusting people who know, not just the stuff we hear on the internet today, just all over, right? Comparisons and things of joy, as it said, right? So you don't want to compare yourself too much, but you're not talking about critics. You're talking about people who actually are ahead of you and can save you tons of time and effort falling on your own.
Totally.
So
totally. And so you got to be able to, you say like, what should they do? That person, I think ego comes into play. I think sometimes it comes from our childhood. I've had people get mad at me and they've done nothing. They've never built anything, but they're like, I know I have talent. I'm like, I'm not saying you don't have talent. I'm saying what you're showing me here doesn't resonate, and it's not going to resonate. And they have a hard time with it. I think ego from past rejection really comes into it. But one of my strengths, I think, and it can be painful sometimes, is telling the truth. I can't lie. So I can hedge it a little bit and not be so harsh, but I would rather you dislike me for me being who I am than you like me for me being somebody that I'm not. And I think by not giving advice to somebody that asked for it, that can help them, that's robbing that person of growth. I really believe that. So I'd rather you walk away and not like, because what's happened a lot of times is I'll get a message 4 years later and be like, you know what? I was mad at you, but I thought about it and you were right. And I did it and this happened. And I'm like, that's cool. That's cool. I don't mind you being mad at me, but I can't be disingenuous about it.
I love this conversation for multiple reasons. I know this to be true about you. We had this very thinking thing happen between us. Yep. So you gave me some hardcore feedback. You suggested, we had a conversation, we got through it. You suggested I look at my edges and that what I was saying wasn't quite resonating with you. And I remember that very distinctly. That was 3 years ago that we had that conversation. Yeah. And powerful stuff.
But the thing is, you can walk away and be like, this person is willing to end a friendship or have that person end it with me because I need to be able to tell them something that I think is valuable to them. Right. And hopefully the person leaves and goes, maybe he was a little bit of a jerk to me, but he had integrity when he did it. And that's way more important. And I just, I've always valued, if you care about me, I've always valued honest feedback. And I don't call it even critique or criticism, because criticism is almost just like tearing you down. Feedback is, hey, you need a breath mint and you're about to go into an event, and hey, take the breath mint. I've learned this. Anytime anybody offers you a breath mint, take it. Don't argue with them about that. Just take the breath mint and put it in. That's one of those type of things.
This is great. You're dropping those little nuggets that aren't even related to business, and I love it. It's so true. It's funny, but it's true. Hey, like, take the hint.
Yeah.
No, this is great, Vincent, and it's really honest. It's honest stuff, and it's a simple topic, but it really runs deep with a lot of us. So I'm glad you're sharing this. It's really important stuff. We've got to be able to take it. Good.
I think a lot of us have been lied to a lot along the way. And we see people that are in it for whatever motives they have and whatever reason. They'll tell you this. And then, I've been in the professional world of like sports and celebrity in some ways in terms of photography. And I've seen it. I've seen the smiling and compliments, and they turn their back and it's just insults. I've seen the backbiting and the two-facedness. And it's like, I don't care about the success that you think I have, but I do care that when you turn around that you know that I was truthful with you. And has that cost me business? Oh, of course it has. Do I care? I do not care, because you wind up working with the people you want to work with, and you wind up having the people around you that can take it. And then you can ask them for feedback, and they will ask you for feedback. And then you grow stronger together, as opposed to a bunch of things like, oh, just tell me what I need to hear and I'll be happy with it.
I think you touched on a really important point there. There's a lot, and the way you said it was very truthful and honest, whether people like it or they like hearing it or they don't. People have been lied to for a long time. And there's a lot of people pleasing out there, and relationships in and of themselves. A lot of us have grown up under the understanding that we know intuitively people are just going to tell us what we want to hear. And friends do that all too often, let alone business. When we speak about business, there's a lot of toxic environments out there because you just don't get real feedback. Look, your work sucks. Sorry, man. But I need you to resubmit. It sucks right now. Here's what I don't like about it. Here's what I do like about it.
But the question is and I don't know if it comes from school or whatever, but when did we get the impression that everything we do is great? And when did we get the impression that if somebody tells us it needs to be better, that's a bad thing? Why wouldn't you want to get better? I've never understood. Why would you not want to get better? Is it laziness? Like, no, I already did the work, so don't tell me anymore. But if it doesn't, we had a situation in photography where I had a friend that was doing a critique, and I was doing a critique for him, just like Joe Elbert did for me, because I learned, and I was really tough with him because I wanted him to succeed. And he's explaining to me what's in the picture. You don't understand. It was snowing that day. I'm like, you can tell me everything you want to tell me. I'm looking at the picture and I don't feel it. It's not being felt. So it obviously didn't convey. So you have everything in your mind about why it's good. But if it doesn't translate to that image or to that page or to that book, you can tell yourself all the lies you want to tell yourself. If it doesn't resonate with the audience, it's not going to resonate. And you're going to be really disappointed when you put it out there and it doesn't resonate. And you're going to wish that you got tougher feedback earlier so you don't have to start all over again.
So powerful, Vincent. I'm glad. This is a great topic, and I'm glad you brought it up. And again, if you're listening or watching and you're like, there's truth in that. Well, I got to listen to this. I suggest you do, and begin to surround yourself with people who are going to give you real, honest feedback. They're not going to tear you down. No, they're going to be honest with you. And if not, then now you know who to reach out to.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, I know you and I can talk business all day long, every day, but we also have to get to some stuff, right? You have some schooling to get to and some other things. So I appreciate that. I know that, well, I don't like to make assumptions, but I know this about you. You're about freedom, right? So we work to live, not live to work. And you've already spoken into it already a little bit. I always ask the question, because we work to live, what's the most fun vacation you ever have had? I know you've traveled quite a bit. So
yeah, we've been fortunate to blend. And I know you want it to be just not business. But so many of the great trips we've had have been a blend. And because Dan Miller taught me this, is like, you don't know when I'm working or when I'm playing. Like when I went to shoot the Super Bowl in New Orleans for 5 days with my wife, we were just about to be married. We worked that together. Was I working or was I playing? Because it seems like being on the field of the Super Bowl and hanging out in New Orleans during Mardi Gras and the Super Bowl on Bourbon Street didn't sound like that much work. Now I was working, but it was a lot of fun, right? So we blended it. I think the best for me all around was when our first book was launched, Freelance to Freedom. We decided, my wife and I, that I decided I'm not going to do a book signing thing. Like, I'm not a big name author. I'm not going to try to go to Barnes and Noble and convince people to buy a book and have me sign it and look like a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. So what we decided to do was, let's go on a road trip as a family so we could do this together. And we decided to do a 3-month road trip across the country from Pittsburgh to California. And we were going to stop and we were going to give the book to as many of the people that helped us with the book and the message as possible. So it was 3 months and we went to 23 different states. I got to hand the book to Dave Ramsey. I got to hand the book to Dan Miller, to Seth Godin, John Lee Dumas, Pat Flynn, tons of friends along the way that we got to stop for dinner and drinks, and the kids got to meet everybody. And we still talk about that trip, you know, to be able to spend a month in Oceanside, California, and then go to San Francisco and meet friends up there, and then spend a week in Utah, and then go hiking and do all the things, be on the beach and be in the mountains and just go see the country together, while doing a pretty cool thing for business in the book. To me, nothing got lost, because it wasn't like, oh, I took all this time off and nothing got accomplished work-wise. A ton got accomplished work-wise, but it really didn't feel like work. And we look back in those pictures and we go, especially now, our kids are 16, 14, and 10. This time goes by really fast. And this was something that we really wanted to do. And if we wouldn't have done it, I would have been like, what was kind of the point of doing all this if that's really what we wanted, we didn't do it. So we've done 4, multiple month road trips, 5 multiple month road trips around the country. And now that they're getting older and getting settled in here with the church, we're not doing it as much. And I'm just so thankful that we did it while we could.
Love it. I love that answer. Hybrid, business, pleasure, don't know the difference. I mean, who wouldn't love that answer? I love it.
So that goes back to the first thing, which is options. That gives us options, And if I want to go and work for 3 hours, Elizabeth's going to take the kids to the pool or go to some museum and I get some work done. So why not?
I love it. Look, I want to ask you about, because I know you can be humble. We can all be humble at times, but you have some really cool initiatives. You have some really cool programs. You've got books. I mean, you got a book coming out. So would you be willing to just honestly speak into what do you got going on? What are you working on? I know some of what you accomplished. Just speak into you, Vincent.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate it. It's a handful of things, right? I have a daily podcast. So I know a big thing about podcasts is a lot of times, like, people can't retain as much. Like, it's a lot of time to dedicate. So I'm going to do a short daily podcast, 5 to 7 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes. There's no intro, there's no outro, there's no music. It's right to the point, just like this, right to the point, quick hits, learn something, be better than yesterday. So it's called the Total Life Freedom Podcast. If anyone want to check it out, I would love it. We have a mastermind membership community for entrepreneurs called Total Life Freedom Community. And it is just like-minded, generous, driven entrepreneurs that get it. And that's kind of a catchphrase we use, entrepreneurs who get it, because my brother-in-law wouldn't understand. And a lot of people's brother-in-laws or moms wouldn't understand. Entrepreneurs deal with their own separate set of problems. It's very lonely sometimes, especially the solopreneur. We don't realize that. We go into it thinking it's the dream. And then we go, I got nobody to bounce ideas off of. I got nobody to collaborate with. I have nobody that really gets what my problems are. And then when you can get a group of 100, 120 people that get it and you can collaborate with, that's the community that I couldn't find. And so I decided to build it. That's kind of who I am. If I can't find it, I'm going to build it. So there's that. And then the book, which is really cool, which launches May 2nd. It's called The Wealth of Connection. We hear all the time about people that are a wealth of knowledge, that are a wealth of information, but we rarely hear about the people that are a wealth of connection. That's where the title came from. But the people that are a wealth of connection, they know everybody and they know the doors to open and they know how the whole thing works. They're the ones that, and they usually do really, really well because they're well connected and they understand it. So the book is all about why it's important and how to become one. So that's the book that's coming out May 2nd. And I'm super excited about it.
I love it. Thank you so much. Fantastic mastermind. Great book. I happen to have a preview copy. So I want to encourage you to look. There'll be links below. And fantastic podcast. I love the style of your podcast. You nailed it. Like quick hits, powerful stuff. And it just gives you something to think about. And it's so short that anybody can do it.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
great stuff. There'll be links to all of that below. I encourage you, I highly endorse Vincent personally, and I highly encourage you to check out those links. So if somebody wants to actually reach out to them when they see this and they hear this, now
Yeah.
some people do their due diligence, but what is the best way of all of those to reach out to you, Vincent?
Yeah, two things. If they want to find out what we do, go to the website, totallifefreedom.com. If they want to reach out to me personally, send me an email, Vincent@totallifefreedom.com. I read all of them. I respond to all of them. That's the power of connection.
The power of connection. You definitely walk the talk, my friend. Thank you so much. I know that you took a chunk out of your day to be here to serve, and I love that, and I celebrate you for that. So thanks for being on.
My pleasure.
Mine too, my privilege. This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where this is fun. Business owners making 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Look, you hear a lot of talk about all those figures on the internet, but it's about the money and the freedom, but it's also about sharing their wisdom to create a global impact to make the world a better place. And lately I've been saying, because it's important to know, there's unity in community. Get connected, my friends. Thanks for joining us.